Chapter 1, Part 2, we're going to look at lines where white plays either bishop to c4 or pawn to a4 early. So the first four moves, Jesse, exactly what we saw in Part 1 of Chapter 1. And now at this point, we're looking at bishop c4, pawn to a4. But first, should we show why we're doing the hedgehog with these positions?
Yeah, we got it. We got to burn this into people's memories. So bishop c4, let's say we just develop normally, or maybe we kick once, they draw back,
Yep.
and then we decide to play knight d7. This loses on the spot. This is a one-move tactic, kind of a two-move tactic, and it is game over. They can take our king and, or sorry, our pawn, and we actually can't take it back here because if we take, bang, and wherever we go, it's game over. Pick a
Wow.
square, Matt. Where should we go?
How about e8?
E8, smothered mate on our queen.
How about f8?
If F8, okay, check.
How about f6?
We can come up, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That is checkmate.
Woo.
And this is checkmate.
Okay, so I'm glad we're showing this early. So you guys need to know when you see bishop c4, be aware of this. We want to block the bishop. We need to block the bishop by putting our pawn on e6.
Yep, and if you even play in this position, you can autopilot knight d7. Same tactic, you are losing. You need to be very, very careful when you see bishop c4. Ingrain this one into your mind. Never lose against bishop c4 in this position. All right, we clear? We good?
Yeah, okay, we're good. We're good. So we can
All
safely
right.
play pawn to b5 though. So there we're okay.
Yeah,
Um,
we have a square for our queen if we go through that same line.
yep, great point. So we're going to look at bishop to d3 in this position, and then we will also look at, sorry, bishop to b3, and we will also look at bishop to d5. Let's start with the main move, bishop to b3. And
All right, let's
here,
develop our knight. No, I'm kidding.
no, don't do it. Don't do it. We're going to play pawn to e6. So we completely stop all of those bishop takes f7 nonsense tactics. And I do have a note in the text, but it's not strong enough as it is, it's stronger in this video, letting you know, do not play knight d7 there. And if white castles, the main move, now we play knight to e7. And this is going to be our improvement in this line. What we're looking to do is hold back this c8 bishop temporarily. And what we want to do is complete our kingside development. And we kind of have to watch for this threat of a quick bishop g5, rook here, pawn to e5. So getting our kingside development done first, waiting on this c8 bishop, so not immediately playing bishop to b7, is going to be an improvement over sort of our standard setup. Okay, so let's look at bishop g5, main move. What do we do here, Jesse?
Yeah, we want to kick. We don't want this bishop to stick around and keep our knight pinned. So let's start with h6. It doesn't really make any sense for white to take here. That's just giving up the bishop pair for no real reason. So if they drop back, we're going to continue bullying with their pawns with the g5. So we now have both of our flank pawns on the 6th and 5th rank. I like that. Bishop g3 all the way back. And now it's finally time to develop our knight to d7. White is still looking to play e4 to kind of secure the center, but we can actually respond with both d4, or sorry, I said e4 and then e5. So e5 and d5, we can just push past in both of those cases.
Well, if white plays pawn to d5, here we can push past. But if they play e5, which we're going to look at in the course, we can actually take. But the nice thing is if you do push past, that's an okay move. So you can definitely do that. But we can gain a small advantage by taking here. And this is what we're going to look at. After knight takes, we're going to actually go into a queen trade line and play this for an endgame advantage. So in this part 2 of chapter 1, we're going to see a couple different things. We're going to see queen trades where we play for the endgame advantage, but we're also going to see kingside attacks where the queens stay on and we do stuff like knight g6 and use this pawn storm to go after the white king. So this is one of the queen trade lines. We play knight takes e5. They take back, and this is sort of a forced sequence. We take, they take, we take their queen, they take back. Now we play knight g6. And what do you notice about white's pawn structure in this position?
Yeah, so this E pawn is very weak, and they would love to play F4 here, but our G pawn is defending that, so it's not really an option. So we're really going to have the upper hand just attacking this weakness. So I'm even thinking a sequence of move like fianchetto the bishop, bring the rook over, bring the rook up to attack the pawn. I mean, obviously it doesn't work immediately, but just keep adding pressure to this pawn as much as we can.
And
Um, and also, this bishop has much less scope than our bishop is going to have on this nice diagonal.
you know a crazy thing in this position? We have like Stockfish Lite going in our chess.com browsers right now. I'm seeing 0.36. It stops at depth 22. But when I let this run on my computer, the eval was minus 1.2. It's a massive advantage for black once you let the computer run a little bit deeper because, like Jesse highlighted, this pawn on e5 is not easy to defend. It can't be easily defended by a pawn. Our bishop is going to be a beast. King e7, rook d8, all of these things minus 1.2 advantage. So that's why we're going for this queen trade line because we have a lot to play for here.
Yeah, and our moves just seem very simple and automatic too. White needs to come up with something here to kind of change the structure or create a weakness or something.
Yeah. Okay, now let's go back to move number 7. We looked at castling here for white. Let's look at 7 bishop to g5. And this is just a common idea for white in these positions. When they see the pawn on e6, they like to play bishop to g5, not only hitting our queen, but also targeting our dark squares and making us figure out where do we put that g8 knight. We've been avoiding f6 because of the e5 stuff. So what are we going to do here?
Yes, let's develop our knight not to f6, but to e7. And we want to do the same type of thing, kick with h6, g5 in the future too. So queen d2. In this position, we're actually not going to kick right away. We have a better move, and that is c5. If you play h6 here, it's not the end of the world, by the way. So c5, a tricky line. So white can trade queens into what seems like a favorable endgame, but it's actually to our advantage. And we're gonna play out a couple moves here to take a look at that. So d takes, we take. This very force if they want to go into it. They castle with check, so it looks like they just have everything going for them. And this knight, like we can't really clear out this way because the knight is hanging. So let's block with the knight. But we're actually developing, and this looks like a bit like a scary move, but it's really hard for them to get many more attackers to us. So we're fine to pin ourselves here. So developing and blocking the check. And what is the eval in this position even?
This is another one of those where at low depths, you're only seeing a minus 0.1. At high depths, minus 0.8 for black already. And that bishop on b3 is a problem piece for white. So let's go a little bit deeper. Pawn to a4. This makes sense. Trying to win a pawn, and also they see our king in the center. But we can insert pawn to c4 before we react here. Bishop to a2. And now white is not threatening to win this pawn. Because if a takes b, knight takes b5, the bishop simply hangs on a2. So we got a little tactic there. And here we're going to play h6 and slowly start to untangle. So what do we expect white to do here?
Yeah, so white is probably going to move their bishop somewhere. It really doesn't make sense to go back because we can just kick again. So let's look at f4, decent diagonal at least. And we're going to play king e8 to get out of this pin, and we can move with this knight again. So our plan from this position, we're going to play bishop b7, knight c6, other knight c6, other knight c5, and just start to press forward. We're also looking at this idea too,
Ooh,
uh, messing up the pawns. Yeah, a similar position to last time. So this is a nice position for us. Yeah, anything else to say about this resulting position?
not really. I think this is one where once you play a few of these endgames, you'll get a nice feel for it. But really, you just have to kind of watch for one move threats by white, and it's pretty easy to untangle here. And then you start to realize that minus 0.6 or minus 0.8 advantage. All right, so let's go back to move number 6. And we looked at bishop back to b3 here, but what if white inserts bishop to d5, poking at the rook? You could play rook a7. That's not really necessary, though. We can just play pawn to c6. It's the only good move. And this is going to be close to transposing to the bishop to b3, move 6 line. And what we're going to do here is play pawn to e6. Just create this hedgehog structure. The only difference is the pawn on c6. So what do we expect here?
And yeah, so here white's probably going to castle. Knight e7, so using the same rule of thumb where we don't want to play our knight up to f6 if it's going to get kicked with a move like e5. And yeah, this is similar or the same position as last time, except for our pawn is on c6. So white, if you can remember, wasted a tempo going here and then coming back rather than going back directly. So bishop g5, same idea, h6. Again, asking the bishop what it wants to do. And here we can just actually keep bullying with g5.
Yeah, and then bishop goes back to g3. Now, an interesting thing here is with the pawn on c6, I have in the notes, this doesn't allow us to play knight to d7, because if we play knight d7, bishop takes d6, snacks on the pawn for free. So what we're going to do is go for a queen trade line again. We're going to play pawn to c5 right away. And this is another forced sequence, d takes c. One thing to note about these queen trade lines, Jesse, if white doesn't go for them, we're always looking to just play c4 and dominate them on the queen side, trap their bishop in. So they pretty much have to go for the queen trade line, or at least this very first capture. And if they don't trade queens here, then we're just in great shape. So queen trade line, we take with king. They check us. And what are we going to do here?
Same thing. Let's block with the knight and develop at the same time. Again, really hard to put extra pressure on this pin piece, so we're fine to develop and block the check. After a4, we have very similar idea, c4. One square left for the bishop, bishop a2, and again, we're not actually threatening, or white is not threatening this pawn because their bishop is hanging in the end.
Yeah, and now we get to play our favorite move, bishop takes c3, right away in this position, damaging white's pawns. B takes c3. Look at these pawn islands. Look at that bishop on a2. We go knight g6. Eval here is minus 0.9. Our plan is to play f6. That keeps control of this square. Then we'll go king to e7, bishop to b7, put our rook on d8, eventually play pawn to e5, and that's going to shut out that bishop on g3. So picture this pawn wall with their bishop on g3, and then look at this pawn wall with their bishop on a2. We're really just playing for these minor piece imbalances, pawn structure imbalances, and we're going to cruise in this endgame with that minus 0.9 eval.
Can that a2 bishop ever get in the game, though? I mean, it's blocked everywhere. It can never move back and get out this way because these pawns are locked. It can never take and try to get out anywhere. I don't see a way out for that bishop unless we drop like a b pawn or something.
I think white's trying to hold on for the draw. They're really just hoping we don't have enough to play for the win and they can just hold. But I agree with you. That bishop is so bad. You would almost think this could be a -2 eval, right?
Yeah, I could see. I mean, I could see -3 because this bishop is just not in the game.
Maybe we should put this in the eval trainer.
Yeah, yeah. Guess
Product
the eval.
plug.
That's yeah.
Sponsored
Hopefully,
by.
by the time you listen to this, the guess the eval will be live. We will see.
Yeah. All right, let's go back to move 5, Jesse. Instead of bishop to c4 that we just looked at, we're going to cover 2 lines where white plays pawn to a4 first. And what we're going to do here is we're going to play pawn to b6. So we don't have b5 available. And our next whole chapter is going to be on the hedgehog. So these lines are similar to the hedgehog chapter. But we're going to show some differences in the next chapter too. Bishop to c4. We go pawn to e6. And in the hedgehog chapter, this knight will not be on c3. So this comes out of our 2-knight structure when you see both knights out for white. Hedgehog chapter, a lot of times you'll see the pawn go to c3. And I think that actually makes a little more sense when you see this wall on the 4th rank for that pawn to be on c3 instead of the knight. So this is a little bit mixing of plans for white, I would say. All right, so pawn to e6. Castle most common, and what are we going to do here?
Yeah, let's develop. So knight e7, we want to get castled. And again, we don't want to get kicked with this pawn if we go to f6. And we have a fork in the road, bishop g5 and rook e1. Let's look at bishop g5 first, pinning the knight. And we are going to play our trusty, old reliable h6, kick that bishop out. Again, if they go back, same exact thing. G5, kick the bishop, and grab some space. And so we have the option of castling kingside here, and then pushing our h pawn up the board and trapping the bishop. So that's a nice like kind of long-term plan. So after knight g6, this is where we leave the position. What is the plan going forward from here?
Yeah, great question. If white plays pawn to d5, I recommend pawn to e5, and then like Jesse mentioned, let's storm with the h pawn. If white plays, for example, pawn to h3, creating some room, I think we can just wait to push our pawns and play knight to c6, bring that knight back around to e7, castle kingside. Um, and really, we're just kind of waiting to see what white does. But one thing we can do if we want to push the action there, we could even tuck our king on h8. It's a lot of arrows, and play f5. And we're going to get this pawn formation using the f pawn to lead the charge. So a lot of fun here, a lot of kingside attacking potential. And this is kind of that preview of what we're going to see in the hedgehog chapter, but we get this other flavor of the hedgehog where instead of trading queens, we're going for that kingside pawn storm and kingside attack. And look at this, every single piece is on the board. Every piece, every pawn, nothing has been traded. You have a lot to play with in this position.
Nice.
All right, move 8. Let's look at rook to e1. White might be looking at a quick e5. What are we going to do here?
Let's play knight d7, and this has been played by super grandmaster by the name of Magnus Carlsen. And if they go d5 here, we'll meet it with e5, and if they play e5, we'll meet it with d takes e5, similar to or I guess exactly the same as I think the first line in this chapter. So knight d7, bishop f4. Let's fianchetto our bishop, get it out. And after queen d2, h6. So we are in pure hedgehog. Look at these beautiful pawns.
Yeah, and
Why is it called the hedgehog, by the way? Because this looks like a hedgehog?
I think so. I think it's like hedgehog in waiting, defensive
Okay.
posture. I don't know. I've never met a hedgehog. I'm sure they're pretty aggressive if you poke them in the wrong time.
Yeah, if you try to like poke it in the middle, like it's just, it's not what you want.
Yeah, when you poke it with d5, it pushes past. When you poke it with e5, it takes, I think is why.
Yeah, I think that's classic hedgehog behavior in the wild.
This is also my queen odds theory. I play this same setup. So to make this course, I just took my queen odds course and I just pasted it in here with the queen on the board. Rook a to d1 for white. You might look at this and think, white has not done anything wrong, right? Look at how all of their pieces are well placed. This is like a classic setup with a pawn on a4 to slow this down. But we have play ourselves. We're going to go pawn g5, follow Magnus, and then knight g6. Our knight is an awesome piece on g6. It's eyeing this f4 square. This bishop doesn't have any squares right now, so that's something that we can look to take advantage of. And here the eval is +1 when you let it run at deep depths, when you let it run deeper. The stockfish light is around around 0.04 is what I'm seeing, so right around equal. But in the database, white only scores 28% at the master level, and white only scores 31% at the club level. So black is, scoring twice as well as white, like 70 to 30. This is a dominant score. And what's our plan here coming up?
Yeah, so if white plays h3, then we'll castle, play queen e7, rook a to e8, king h8, f5. So tuck the king away and play the f pawn up like Matt was talking about. And then the same against d5, we can play e5, and against e5, actually in this position we could push past or take.
Yeah, that's right. So you don't have to memorize any theory from this point, just kind of get a feel for the plans. And like we always recommend, play a lot of games in these lines. The best way to improve your middle games is to play a ton of games. Don't just run these through Chessable Trainer, spaced repetition, and that's it. You got to play games and see these positions in practice, and you'll get a great feel for it. Okay,
Yep,
one.
and these are the types of positions where you can outplay your opponent and just cause chaos on the board, and your opponents are gonna like crack really easy with the bad pawn break or forgetting that these pawns seem to be defended by pieces and just win a central pawn for free.
Okay, so that concludes part 2 of chapter number 1. We get to see a very small taste of the hedgehog, and that's going to be what we see in chapter 2. So we'll see you guys in that chapter.